Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Let me call to order the meeting of the Merrimack Planning Board for Tuesday, January 18th, 2022. And let's begin with the Pledge of Allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you, Nelson, for leading us. Thank you all for joining in the Pledge of Allegiance. Let's see, housekeeping items. Let's appoint Nelson in for a voting position in for Lynn's slot. Got a text from Neil that says he's 2 minutes away, so he'll be joining us in a second. But that will give us a full board, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 members, almost a full board. Close enough, but everybody here is into a voting position. Our next meeting after tonight is February 1st, 2022 at 7 p.m. in this Matthew Thornton room. Let me remind everybody that addresses the board to make sure the microphone on the table is turned on and the bright light is bright green so the folks at home can hear you. We will always be able to hear you in the room, but the folks at home are absolutely out of luck without the microphone. So it's for their benefit so they can know what's going on. Please also introduce yourself before you begin to speak so that we can capture that for the minutes of the meeting. Let's see. For those that are here for agenda item number 3, Ktk Realty Trust, the applicants requested a continuance, and so I would suspect that the board would look favorably upon that, and you probably don't need to use part of your night waiting around for that agenda item. There wouldn't be any discussion on it other than the continuance. With that all said, that completes the call to order. Robert, is there any planning and zoning administrators report for us?
Just that the Brady Sullivan site plan is not of regional impact.
What's the will of the board with respect to the determination that the Brady Sullivan project is not a regional impact?
So moved.
Is there a second? Second. Moved and seconded. All in favor, say aye.
I have a question.
Oh, discussion first. Okay, hang on. Don't go yet.
In regard to this.
Yep.
Is not the intersection of Industrial Drive that building is on less than 1,000 feet from the town line? That's one of the criteria for
Let's take a look.
postponing it. And, I mean, for saying it's not a regional impact. But
Robert, do you happen to know that? Because if not, we can certainly take a quick look at Google Maps and see
Yeah,
what it
I'm
tells
doing
us.
that right now to take a measurement.
Yep. As to that criteria, my understanding is that it is one consideration. It's not necessarily determinative, but you're right, it is certainly one of the considerations. So it's 1,000 feet away from aquifer, or directly adjacent to a municipal boundary is the standard in the recommendations.
I thought it was 1,000 feet.
No, this is well in excess of 1,000.
It's more than 1,000. So
Yeah,
the second
yeah.
criteria is whether you're in 1,000 feet, within 1,000 feet of an aquifer, surface waters that transcend municipal boundaries, and there will be either a large water withdrawal. So that's the connection, is it's a surface water that transcends municipal boundaries. The actual proximity to a municipal boundary is that it's directly adjacent to.
Right, okay, sorry.
Either way, it's neither of those
Misread.
things. Any further discussion on the recommendation? Neil, to catch you up, there's a motion and a second on the floor to determine that the Brady Sullivan project is not of regional impact. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstaining? So, one abstaining? Okay, so Neil's going to abstain. That is 5-0-1 to uphold the staff's recommendation. Robert, is there anything further in the Planning and Zoning Administrator's report?
Not tonight, Mr. Chair.
Do any members of the board have questions for the staff on any matter? Seeing none, we will move on to item 3 on our agenda, which is Ktk Realty Trust Llc as the applicant and owners. It is on the agenda as a continued review for acceptance and consideration of final approval for a site plan to operate a trailer suspension and repair business. The parcel is located at 20 Star Drive in the I-1 Industrial and Aquifer Conservation Districts. Tax map 3D1, lot 12. It's case planning board 2021-42. It has been continued from our December 7th planning board meeting. And as I mentioned before, the applicant has requested a continuance to the March 1st, 2022 meeting in order to revise plans to address comments from the previous review memo. What is the will of the board? Paul?
I move to continue this item to the March 1st meeting.
Second.
With no further notice to
With no
abutters.
further notice.
I'll
Second by Nelson. Further discussion? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstaining? 6-0-0 to continue that item. That brings us to item 4 on our agenda, which is Brady Sullivan Properties LLC as the applicant and Solon Properties LLC and Innovation Acquisition LLC as the owners. And it is on the agenda for review for acceptance and consideration of final approval for a site plan to convert a former corporate headquarters building into a 90-unit residential apartment building and associated site improvements. The parcel is located at 1 Innovation Way in the I-1 Industrial and Aquifer Conservation Districts, tax map 2D, lot 4115. It's case planning board 2022-6. Robert, is there anything that we need to know before we hear from the applicants?
Just by way of summary, this is the former Brookstone corporate headquarters building. The applicant has tried to lease it out as a commercial property for a few years unsuccessfully, so they changed gears to attempt to convert to residential. This past summer, they obtained the relief necessary from the zoning board to proceed with the site plan application and are here tonight to present a proposed 90-unit conversion.
Okay. Thank you, Robert. Please, I know we know you very well, but introduce yourself and tell us about the project.
Well, good evening, Mr. Chair, members of the board. For the record, my name is Tom Zajac. I'm a civil engineer with Hayner Swanson, 3 Congress Street in Nashua. Here tonight representing the applicant, Brady Sullivan Properties, for their property located at 1 Innovation Way. Also joining me here tonight is Arthur Sullivan and Chris Lewis from Brady Sullivan Properties, Attorney John Bisson, Cronin, Bisson, and Zielinski, along with Steve Pernaw, the project's traffic engineer.
Excellent.
We're here tonight seeking application acceptance and final site plan approval for a proposed adaptive reuse of the existing office building located at 1 Innovation Way, converting it from an office to 90 multifamily apartment units along with associated site improvements. So, Mr. Chair, if I could, just wanted to provide a brief presentation, after which myself and the rest of the team would be happy to answer any questions from the board or the public.
Okay, Tom, before you do that, or as you approach your presentation, I just want to share with the board as well as to you that our first task is to determine whether the application is complete. And then we would normally, after that point, have a little more in-depth discussion with you. So if you have a way to divide your presentation into sort of the basics of what we would need to know to decide the application's complete and ready for review. And then we'd do a vote on that and then continue on with more in-depth.
Understood.
bits.
Is there a way I can get the plans up?
Yeah,
the screen?
absolutely. Let's see if, yeah, they're coming out.
He's coming.
They'll come out
He
and,
told me he'd come out and help.
yeah. I was calling for Justin, but you don't look anything like Justin.
Unfortunately, I don't have Justin's hair.
Yeah,
Sorry about that.
no worries.
All right, there we go.
Yeah. Is the monitor in the back able to
Yep.
get that one on too? That way I can watch.
Doing triple duty tonight.
Yeah, definitely a tough job. But I can't see it if it's not on that monitor. So. At least not without moving to a different seat. There we go. Okay.
Let me know when you're
Yep.
ready.
Ready, set, go.
Okay, So I'll describe the existing site, I'll get us situated, I'll describe the project, and then I'll break before I talk about waivers and some of the staff comments and items I'd like to discuss afterwards.
Okay.
So as discussed, One Innovation Way is the property, tax map 2D, lot 41-15. It's about an 11.5 acre parcel located in the industrial zone. There is a small portion of the site in the northwest corner, I'll point my cursor to it, that just clips the edge of the property in that location, the Town of Merrimack Aquifer Protection District. Direct abutters, industrial property to the north, Stanley Elevator. Henry Clay Drive to the east, along with industrial and commercial properties. You get the Merrimack YMCA, it's a pet crematorium, and then CSSI, a site contractor in this location here. You can see there's a large multifamily, single-family detached development located just to our south. Along Manchester Street to our west, we've got a commercial office building as well as some undeveloped land in this location here owned by Penachuk Waterworks. The existing property is currently developed, as you can see. Contains a 3-story, approximately 100,000 square foot office building along with associated site improvements. The building was constructed in the early 2000s and was formerly the Brookstone corporate headquarters. Entities controlled by Brady Sullivan purchased the property in 2018, and as Robert mentioned, they marketed the property unsuccessfully for a commercial office use, which has caused them to shift gears, and that's why we're before you here tonight.
Did you say it's been empty since
2018.
18, okay.
I'm not sure if it was empty before that, but that's when they purchased it, so assume
Okay.
shortly before that. Access is provided via 2 curb cuts. First curb cut is located off of Manchester Street, where my cursor is. And then there's a second curb cut off of Henry Clay Drive. The site driveway is really just a private driveway, but it's got a name, Innovation Way. 375 parking spaces are located on site, including 10 accessible parking spaces near the front entrance. It is worth noting that the 03 master or site plan approval included a site plan waiver for an additional 125 spaces that were shown loosely in this area here on the site and towards the front entrance. We're glad they weren't constructed because we're changing uses.
Yeah.
There is a loading area on the westerly side of the building. In this location here, there's a small patio in the back that overlooks a very steep slope that drops down to Manchester Street if you've been out to the site. The topography on site is rather unique. The main body of the site, including the parking in the building, it's a relatively flat, but it sits up much higher than most of the abutting properties. There are steep slopes along the perimeter of the property, as I mentioned, directly behind the building. As this private driveway slopes down and around, there's a good 30 to 50 foot drop in that location. You can see there is some wooded buffer along the perimeters, more so towards Henry Clay Drive than others. There is a wetland that is located out here in the wooded area that was represented on the previous plans. Of course, we're not proposing anything in that area. There is an on-site drainage system within the parking and building areas. There are 3 existing stormwater management areas that were part of that original Brookstone project to accommodate runoff. Building is serviced by public sewer, water by Penachuk, gas and underground electric and telecommunication utilities. So we're here tonight, as mentioned, for a proposal to convert the existing building from an office use into 90 multifamily apartment units, along with some minor site improvements. The project will be known as the Residence at Innovation Way. Brady Sullivan certainly has experience in adaptive reuse projects such as this. Many of those typically involve mill conversions, but as you know, there are more opportunities in the market these days. You've got large commercial properties that are vacant and looking for a repurposed use. You know, given the pandemic-driven working patterns and remote working environment, I suspect, properties like this will be looked at for adaptive reuse purposes. In terms of a mix of unit breakdowns, as I mentioned, 90 total units, 28 one-bedroom units, 61 two-bedrooms, and 1 3-bedrooms. I believe the current thinking is for market rate, apartments for rent, not to be a condo. Of course, that could change in the future, but that is the current thinking. Typical unit features include high-end finishes such as granite countertops, hardwood floors, stainless steel appliances. The Brady Sullivan projects also typically include a number of amenities for tenants inside the building: a community room, mail delivery room, a library, a fitness center, game rooms, putting greens, movie theaters. So typically, they find some extra room in the building to provide those amenities for their tenants. And certainly Chris Lewis, who heads Brady Sullivan's in-house architectural group, can speak to those more if the board has questions. We've got some photos and other sample photos and other things at the back end of our presentation if the board would like some further information regarding the amenities or typical unit layouts. As I mentioned, there are some minor site improvements. I'll flip to my site plan sheet. So the two main areas we're looking to make improvements on: at the front building entrance, we're going to be reconstructing the sidewalk and entranceway and the accessible parking spaces to ensure ADA compliance. ADA rules are constantly changing, and so we felt it was prudent with a new user coming in, new tenant, to make sure that we're in full compliance with all the latest ADA standards at our front door. The second improvement is within the loading area. So there are 2 loading docks that exist just on the westerly elevation of the building. I'll point to it with my cursor here. So the idea is we would like to remove one of the 2 loading docks. I believe that's actually where the gym is going to be, so they're going to replace that loading dock door with a kind of a glass, big glass storefront window type to get some sunlight in there. And we're going to replace the loading door with a man door and a ramp. For a use like this, you can imagine it's less about tractor trailer trucks and more about Amazon delivery vans and single unit box trucks for moving. So that's the plan there. In addition, as I'm sure you've seen in your packets, we did receive some comments from the fire department late last week regarding additional emergency and vehicle access improvements around the building. So I did have a preliminary discussion with Fire Marshal Manueli last Friday. Of course, we both recognize the building will be fully sprinklered and fire alarm systems meeting current code for residential use. As I mentioned, there are very steep slopes behind the building. When you look at a plan like this, it looks like we've got plenty of room to provide a full access drive behind this building, but that would be extremely difficult here, which I believe Fire Marshal Manueli recognized. So what we talked about is a possible solution, which would be to extend vehicle access to really give full access for vehicles on 2 sides of the building. So, of course, the front or south side of the building enjoys full access now with Innovation Way. The loading area side on the west side, you probably have access to about half. We would try to extend the driveway slightly to the north where my cursor is as best we can. There are some generator pads and some steep slopes in that area, so we would work with the fire marshal to try to get full access on that westerly elevation. And then from there, the solution that was discussed was providing a pedestrian or paved walkway behind the building to connect around the northerly rear elevation and then finish that loop all the way. The thought being that in the worst case scenario, they could set up a man ladder on the back on that hard surface to access that side of the building. So that was the discussion that was had. We did not have enough time to submit a plan. We truthfully need a little more survey in that back area. There is a pretty good bench, about 20, 25 feet, where we think we can build a sidewalk before that steep slope drops down. So based on my conversation with Captain Manueli, you know, we're confident that we can work with them to come up with a solution that's amenable to all parties, in keeping with the current condition of approval, that we would work with them and satisfy their conditions. I think the risk would be on us, if we were unsuccessful with that, to have to come back before the board. But where we sit today, I'm pretty confident we can come up with a solution. One of his other comments was that he was requiring that the applicant obtain the services of a fire protection consultant to be involved in the project and make recommendations, review the access we're providing, ensure it meets NFPA standards, and also the building system. So that's something that certainly Brady Sullivan is amenable to. As I mentioned, those are really the only site improvements we're proposing. There's no new site lighting or landscaping improvements. The plan is to, you know, keep the remaining parking lot and site driveway as it exists today. And then I would just lastly note that, as Robert mentioned, the project did receive 3 variances from the zoning board back in October of 2021 for use, density, and setbacks. That really allows us to be before you here tonight. So I guess, Mr. Chair, this would be a good time for me to pause. I've got traffic, site plan waiver, and closing my presentation left, so.
Okay, excellent. Board members, do you have any comments or questions related, for the applicant, related to whether the application is complete and subject to our jurisdiction? If not, is there a motion to that effect?
I will move to accept it as complete.
A motion by Nelson to accept it as complete. Is there a second?
Second.
Second by Brian. Further discussion? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? I'm sorry.
Further discussion?
Oh, I'm sorry. I saw your hand go up. I thought you were already voting.
You know, in my mind, the fire is a big thing, because I did go out and looked at the building, and when I read the comments, and really, truly, that backside is going to be a challenge, I think, because he's right, it drops off pretty quick. And I think without having having to hire a fire consultant to actually help develop that plan back there, I wouldn't call it complete until we actually see that. That's just me, and I'm not the new kid on the block anymore, but that's my thought.
No, you're not. Well, I am interested in hearing about the fire consultant, and I know the applicant is hoping that we would leave things in the hands of the fire department and have some kind of contingent approval. I personally was thinking that I would want to see the fire department's results before we get to a final result. So that doesn't necessarily mean that we would decide this application is incomplete at this stage, but it would certainly mean that we would want to have that information further. As it relates to whether the application is complete or not, I think it's been our usual course to have that information arrive as a part of the process along the way, and not necessarily always be in hand at this stage. Any other discussion about completeness? If not, I'm sorry for the false start on the earlier vote. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstaining? So that's 6-0-0 to find that the application is complete. Tom, I have some questions already, but I want to allow you to have the presentation that you want to do first.
Sure.
Which would you prefer?
If you don't mind, I'll just go ahead and finish. I got 2 pages left, and then
Let me
we
have
can
it then.
dive right into
Awesome.
the Q&A.
Go ahead, please.
So my next piece was just about traffic. So there is a request for waiver of full site plan, but we did feel in talking with staff that it was appropriate, given the change of use, to have a traffic impact memo prepared, which Steve Pernaud did in his memo dated December 10th, 2021, which was submitted by the site as part of the site plan application, and is in the process of being reviewed by the town's peer review consultant. I think, as Tim puts it in the memo, out of an abundance of caution. there's a large decrease, which I'll talk about in a second, so we don't expect there to be any issues. So the memo includes a trip generation analysis comparing the existing 100,000 square foot office with the proposed 90 residential units. Based on the ITE manual criteria, the proposed development will generate approximately 144 fewer daily vehicle trips, 99 fewer trips in the AM peak, and 79 fewer trips in the PM peak compared with that existing office use. In addition to the trip generation analysis, the traffic consultant performed a site distance analysis at the two existing driveways at Henry Clay Drive and Manchester Street, and found that available site distance looking right and left exceed the minimum distances recommended by AASHTO, both for the posted speed limit and also for the design speed. So as I mentioned, Mr. Pernaugh is here tonight and is happy to answer any questions you have related to traffic. So, Mr. Chair, we did submit a request for a waiver of full site plan in my letter dated January 13th, 2022. I'll incorporate that by reference. Project is essentially a change of use to convert the existing office building to residential. The proposed site improvements are limited to near the front building entrance and loading area. We feel these improvements are minor in comparison with the overall property and the proposed internal change of use. As I mentioned, we did provide a traffic memo to the planning board, and that is being reviewed to quantify the traffic impact. And instead of requesting individual waivers for items such as full boundary topographic survey of the whole parcel, stormwater study, lighting plans, landscaping plans, staff recommended we request a waiver of full site plan review, which of course we were in concurrence with. So that's before you here tonight, Mr. Chair. So, in summary, we believe the proposed application is complete and conforms with the applicable site plan regulations. We believe the proposed site is being redeveloped in a responsible manner and is a great opportunity to increase the town and the region's housing stock where it's desperately needed. We've reviewed the staff report and are okay with the suggested conditions of approval. And so this completes my formal presentation, and happy to answer any questions.
Thank you, Tom. A couple of questions that I had along the way. You mentioned that there are there's stormwater facilities on the property, and you said 3 different zones or something like that. Can you give an overview of the existing stormwater system and how it functions?
Yes. So there's really 3 stormwater basins that are present on site. They're all really the same practice type. It's an infiltration practice, so it's got a riprap 4-bay or apron. It drains into a grassed basin area where, during a big storm event, collects water, drains fully into the ground, as you would typically see. So the 3 locations, I can point to them with my cursor. This is a stormwater management area here. There's also one located here in the northwest corner, and then there is a 3rd one located here adjacent to the wetlands. So the site drainage, if I zoom in here, you may be able to see some of the structures. You can see some of the catch basins. Really, the whole site drains in a north-south direction away from the building, and water is pushed up against the perimeter of the site. You can see 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 catch basins. So all the drainage that flows to these catch basins, which would include, maybe this pizza pie of the parking lot, will drain to this stormwater area. And similar here, runoff is cut off by the curb and drains down the hill to this stormwater management area here. And then there is a small stormwater basin in this location here that picks up some of the drainage from the site driveway as well as the back half of the building.
Okay.
And the building drains into the site drainage as well.
As far as you know, everything on the stormwater system is functioning as designed?
Yes, correct.
Okay. There's never been any issues with the neighbors with runoff to their properties or anything?
Not that we're aware of.
Okay. I think that really helps to know that because obviously with any development we have, making sure that the stormwater functions properly. And I think it helps to understand what you have here, so that the change of use, which is gonna have be less impactful, less people, less going on, it's easy to understand the potential waiver for that part of a full site plan review. So let's talk about the parking lot. 375 existing spaces, and your plan sheet, one says you need 131. Are you keeping all of the pavement?
That is the current plan right now. So the focus was converting, renovating the inside of the building. You know, when we were brought on board, Painter Swanson, we made some recommendations. Of course, they had already in mind the loading dock improvement, the removal, the kind of the upgrade there, more targeted to move-in vans and delivery vans. We evaluated the ADA area, and that became, you know, something that we wanted to include in the project. But you know, really the goal here was to try to keep things focused on the building, and there weren't really any contemplated improvements throughout the site, including removing parking spaces or really reconfiguring anything out in the parking lot.
So it's the intention to snow plow and maintain all 375 spaces, or are those gonna be sort of neglected in snow piles and everybody's extra camper, or what's the plan for, what's gonna happen in a surplus of 244 parking spaces?
Yeah,
That's
I
acres of parking.
probably asked one of the members of the Brady Sullivan team to answer that question. You're right, it's, you know, there's some surplus parking out there, no doubt. And so some of that area may be used for snow piling or other purposes.
I would think it would, with a housing development, that would be a great opportunity to have some outdoor amenities for people with a little green space and that sort of thing, and allow you to do some landscaping that sort of makes it start to look more like a residential development instead of an apartment building. That's what I'd like to see. I think it would certainly help the drainage to not have so much impervious surface to deal with. And also, I'm imagining as people would come there to use the property, just having a massive parking field that's 3 times bigger than what's needed is just gonna seem peculiar to the tenants, the guests, the residents, or just the sort of the impression of whether it feels like the kind of quality development that I'm sure the applicant's looking for. With respect to the fire piece of it, thank you for providing a few elevations of the building. And I see that there's no balconies or no exterior features on the building that are planned. Do those windows even open to the rear?
Good evening. My name is Chris Lewis. I'm architect for Brady Sullivan Properties. So I can speak to some of those specifics as it relates to the building. And currently the building windows are not operable, and we intend to maintain those as they are.
I didn't hear what, I'm sorry, what did you say about the windows?
They do not open.
They do not.
Yeah, and we'll keep them that way. Yeah.
Has the fire department discussed that with you, and what's their thoughts on, I'm sure that they're planning out, you know, and maybe that's part of the fire consultant is figuring out exits for everybody, but I don't know whether that affects their thought process on whether they need to have ladder access to windows that don't open.
Yeah, and I'm not sure if that specific item was brought up to them. I mean, in a building like this, because you don't really expect people to be exiting out the windows or, it's fully sprinkled. You know, there's two exits through the corridors, 2 means of egress out of the building, which is typical in a structure like this.
Looks like you actually have 3, don't you, in the middle and on both ends?
Yes, but yeah, I say 2 just because that's the requirement.
Oh, I see. It doesn't surprise me that the windows don't open. I mean, and not that that's any sort of a issue. It's lots of higher rise apartment buildings where the windows are that way, but I didn't know if that affected what the fire department was after. because I don't know what you would do if you were trying to I mean, I guess they could break a window, but, it doesn't seem like it's gonna be the way that you rescue people out of the building.
Right, it's very unlikely.
Yeah, Captain Manueli did not mention that concern specifically. So truthfully, when I first read his comments, I understood it to be that he was looking for full vehicle access around all four sides, which is why we had the discussion, and he conveyed to me that, ultimately, we need to provide him something for the fire chief to review in concert with him, but that's why he's asking for, he says in his comment 4 in his letter, January 12th, due to the unique conditions of the proposed change of use, the entire building shall be surveyed and all plans reviewed by a New Hampshire licensed fire protection engineer to ensure that all emergency access, life safety, sprinkler, fire alarm systems are correctly designed for the new residential use. So he's really looking for the project to bring on a third-party New Hampshire licensed fire protection engineer hired by the applicant to really vet through all those issues and come forward and say, this is approved, this is what we feel is,
Yeah.
meets code, rather than maybe putting that all on the fire marshal and their team.
Okay, it makes sense to me. Just more information that I'll want to know more about as that develops and we learn those details. I heard you mention generator pad. Is the building currently supplied by a generator, and is that a plan to keep that?
Yes, correct.
Okay. Does the generator does generator just operate elevators and emergency functions, or can it operate the building, or how much service will a resident receive from the
It'll
generator?
be the emergency features of the building.
So hallways and elevators and fire escapes?
Yes.
Kind of thing, okay. Certainly it's better than not having anything, I guess.
One of the other
pretty good.
pieces here, and it will help shed some light on some of his concern, is I believe the existing building and fire protection service has a cistern to help with pressure, and so part of his concern was putting the onus on the applicant to demonstrate for some of the building systems, fire protection systems, have proper pressure, and if there's an upgrade that's needed in terms of that would be, part of that third-party review.
Is the cistern on your property?
It is, yes.
How big is it?
I don't know that answer.
We don't have that information.
Does it serve just your building, or is it available for the fire department in the area if they need it for other properties?
I believe it's just for
the
this.
building, yeah.
Just for this building. So I believe, Mr. Chair, that we're told, and Chris and his team are trying to track down some plans for that cistern, the original design, but I believe it's located right here, kind of in the corner of the building.
Okay. Above ground or below ground?
No, it's below ground. We
Interesting.
did not locate it as part of our survey, which is why it's not on the plan, but I won't speak to its size, but there's not a ton of room over there.
I'm sure if the fire department is gonna accept it as a part of your fire system, then they'll get into whether it's been maintained and whether, as a result of this, it has to be rehabbed in some way or whatever, but there is a maintenance requirement for the cisterns. You talked about, I know that the waiver of full site plan review is before us, and I support it with respect to some of the elements of a full site plan review, but we talked about parking and I'd like to see less parking so that it conforms to the amount that you need for the site. But site lighting kind of goes hand in hand with that, and site lighting for a office building and of 375 spaces and site lighting for a 90-unit apartment building are somewhat different. There's a little bit more aesthetics to residential siting. It's maybe appropriate for safety, but a little less intense, and maybe with different hours and things. And I might favor understanding more about how the site is lighted and whether it suits kind of a way a residential site looks. Do you have thoughts about that, or?
I don't know a lot about the existing site lighting system and plan, other than that it was, reviewed and approved by the board back in '03. I don't disagree with your comment with regard to different uses having different types of lighting, though we do see commercial style, lighting used for large, multifamily projects like this, as opposed to, you know, maybe a single-family detached, multifamily development where you would see more of a residential style fixture.
So the building was built in '03, or was there some modification of the site plan in '03?
That was when the original approval was for Brookstone in 2003. It was
So they
built
occupied it for
shortly
about 10
thereafter.
years, and then they're vacating it. Wow. What a strange choice of decisions that must have been.
Yeah, they went.
Yeah,
bankrupt,
true,
yeah.
but still, it seems like you would have seen that coming before you decided to build a new building. That might have been on the horizon. I guess not, though. So when it comes to the waiver of full site plan review, I think the drainage and the traffic and some of those issues, I think, are easy to grasp, but parking and lighting, also, if you were to get, well, whether you get rid of parking lot or not, landscaping around a residential use, and you might have some benches outside or some outdoor recreation areas or some kind of gathering areas. And we don't have any sort of prescription to say it must be a barbecue area or a swing set, but have you thought about, and is there any plan to have some outdoor amenities as a part of the plan?
There's not at this time. As I mentioned, there are a number of amenities inside the building that they're proposing, and there's also that patio in the back of the building that exists now. Fairly
Okay.
sizable patio that has direct building access overlooking kind of the steep slope and further towards the Pennachuck lands to the north and
Okay,
west, so.
well, certainly that could be an amenity, and if it's already there, it's a good start on some things. In terms of landscaping, I know that a lot of the site is wooded, and if it's the intention to leave that alone, I get it. Makes a lot of sense. Up near the building, I would think that there should be some landscaping and some islands and things that break up the sea of pavement. What are your thoughts on, what the applicant's willing to do with respect to landscaping to focus on the aesthetic appearance of the building?
Which area, Mr. Chair, are you speaking to? The kind of the area between Innovation Way and the building, or are you talking, there's trees that are, parking lot landscaping areas that are present, throughout the parking lot. There are, some foundation plantings, some mulch areas in and around. You can see at the front entrance, when you go out there now, it's just a big sea of concrete there, and we're pulling back from that. So these areas here will likely include some green space. We haven't provided a plan showing specifics, but there'll certainly be some landscaping improvements just right there in that location.
Yeah. Obviously, by the front entrance is a good place for this, some landscaping, but I had more in mind. I thought, well, you mentioned some parking lot islands, and you certainly can't tell that from the satellite. It looks like there's, the parking lot's completely covered. And as I mentioned, I would love it if there was a part of the plan to get rid of the excess parking, and that would open up lots of spaces where you could put some trees and lawn or whatever else makes sense there, or let it be completely wooded if you wanted. And maybe there's some walking trails or something that goes through it. But generally speaking, focusing on the fact that it's now residential instead of commercial, there usually is more of a focus on, providing a little bit more landscaping, a little bit more green area around the building for appearances. So I didn't have anything specific in mind and say put 2 trees there. But generally speaking, just sort of a facelift in the landscape area. As you zoom in on that picture, can you were there any divisions in the parking lot for landscaping? I don't see any in the middle of the parking lot for trees. I see a few light stanchions, it looks like.
Yeah, so the interior islands here, you can see, I think with the exception of this one, are really just, grass islands. You can see all the landscaping that was installed along the site driveway here, along this island here. And then, of course, on the perimeter of the sites, there is some really good buffering and landscaping here that shields the loading area from the remainder of the site, from the front parking area. So a lot of that original landscaping has come in pretty good. You've got chunks here, you've got chunks here. I know there were some plantings down and around the stormwater area
Yeah,
that were installed, so.
I'm cautious about comments because I think that our planning board's authority sort of runs parallel with it being at a residential use and kind of what's consistent with a residential use. And I think if we got into sort of completely designing it and saying it must be this or it must be that, we've probably gone beyond our authority as a planning board. So I don't want to be so prescriptive to say that it has to be this, that, or the other thing. I think generally all of the things that I'm talking about are focused at making the site appear like a residential development instead of a relatively glass and concrete, clearly office building structure that's there now.
Are there, if you don't mind me asking, a number of spaces that you would prefer? Are you seeking us to come down to 131?
I want you to have all that you
spaces
need,
and
and then,
2 spaces per unit?
I want you to have all that you need and then some extra for guests and those kinds of things, but that's probably well below half what you have, isn't it? You have 375, even with 90 units, even if you had 2 parking spaces per unit, which is well above our requirements, you're still getting rid of nearly 200 spaces. And so my approach to parking is I want you to have all that the regulations require and that you need for your site and that you reasonably think that you should have. But other than that, parking is not an attractive feature of the property. It is a detractor, and we ought to leave some space for Mother Nature or for kids to play or for that sort of thing. Certainly if this was a greenfield development on a undeveloped site, I would start to tell you no at about 150 or 160 spaces on a development like this, where 130 is what the formula tells us. I know it's different when we're talking about an already developed site and taking things away. So I don't necessarily have a strict number in mind, but you certainly want to take advantage of the fact that look at all the green space that you'd get as a residential development if you downsized it to the right appropriate number.
Yeah.
And you'll also avoid, like I said, everybody that lives here that has a boat or a camper or an extra vehicle that they didn't want to store somewhere else, they're gonna start occupying that space whether you want them to or not.
Yeah. Part of the concern as well is, obviously, cost. They wanna, get the building up and running, and that's where they wanna spend their dollars on the building. But there are concerns in terms of how and where you would peel back from that parking lot. As I described, really the way it's graded is all the water pushes here, so you've got trunk drain lines and structures, so if you said, oh, I'll just wipe out that whole row and then you're good to go, well, there's other considerations there in terms of drainage and curbing and other costs that would be involved in that effort on some of the perimeter areas. And then, you include, if you're looking to, scale back inside, it's tough to grow trees inside, inside an established parking lot area and really provide, you're breaking up that sea of asphalt, as you described, but you're not really providing usable green space for the site. So that's why I'm trying to gauge where your thought process is at. Are you asking to remove 10 to 20 spaces or 100 to 200 spaces? Because there's obvious cost considerations and goals in terms of what that green space will be used for and what we're trying to provide. We do have some available, green space in this area. So if the goal was to provide an outdoor patio or sitting area or gazebo, that could be accomplished in that area, without a major impact to the site parking.
No, I get that you do have some other open space if you wanted to provide the amenities there. I really think when you talk about market rate and high-end finishes and granite and hardwood and all of that, 90 apartments of that type are very valuable and sought after in the market. And why counterbalance all of that good with what everybody that approaches the building will look at and say, why in the world is there 3 acres of asphalt out here instead of some trees and a bench and something approximately the right number of spaces, right? And as to cost, I'm not unsensitive to the idea of cost, but again, 90 market rate luxury apartments are, quite an important development, and the impact of cost is, in some sense, related to, what we're developing here. Anyway, I've dominated the questions enough. Let me turn it over to some of my colleagues to offer whatever thoughts and questions they have. Nelson?
Okay. I want to begin by saying I agree with everything Bob has said about the landscaping and the exterior of this property, that it should look residential, and it should take advantage of all that space to make it a place where, if you have children, a place to play, something to do outside. Obviously, they can't do much off of that balcony. That looks like a place you wouldn't want your kid to go, given the drop-off. So I think that you should give some thought to that. The other thing I wanted to talk about was this Innovation Way. Is that a town road? Is that private? Is that your road and to take care of and own and maintain? Is that part of this parcel?
It's not a public way.
It's not.
It's just a private driveway.
Okay,
I'm assuming that back in '03, and this is, I don't know this for a fact, but many times the fire department, for street addressing purposes, if you have a long driveway, they'll want to have a name for that driveway for street addressing purposes. But
Yeah.
there's no easement in place, there's no right-of-way, public way, anything like that. It's just a private site driveway.
it won't be used, it wouldn't be used for cutting through or for through traffic.
Not unless it has been over the years. I mean, it's been there for 10, 12
Correct,
years.
yeah,
Yeah,
it's
yeah,
a rather circuitous, unless there's an
Yeah.
accident or something.
yeah,
I think it would take you longer to
Okay.
make your way up and down the hill and through the site to
okay,
get where you're trying to go.
It's
Okay.
kind of like Fidelity, Spartan Way, and whatever the other street is within Fidelity. I know there's 2.
yeah.
Forgot the name of the other one.
I just wanted to clarify it for the record. The other thing I'd like to talk about is pedestrian access. This is a little isolated pocket of residential, sort of by itself in the wilderness here. And I think you should give some thought to connections, pedestrian connections, to off-site amenities, either through perhaps to the adjacent property to the south, or to Manchester Street, where you can connect to sidewalks that almost do all of Manchester Street, but a place where people can go and walk and exit the property. Right now, I gather there's no pedestrian ways going off of this property, and I think there should be. If it's going to be occupied by 96 apartments, somebody's going to want to go for a walk, and I think you should provide for that as part of this change in use for the development. Let's see here. I wanted to ask you about how utilities got in here. Where did the electric and so on, it's all underground, I presume?
Correct, yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah, that comes off of, everything comes off of Henry Clay Drive.
it comes off of Henry Clay,
Yeah,
okay.
yeah.
There's electric and, is there gas?
Correct,
Yeah. And water,
yes.
and,
Yeah, everything is off of Henry Clay.
And wastewater goes off,
Gravity sewer, yep.
yeah, it
Yes,
goes
there's
off
a
that way too.
existing
yeah.
8-inch main in Henry Clay Drive, so.
Yeah,
As part of this effort, we're coordinating with the wastewater department, and we will need to file a DES sewer connection permit
mm-hmm,
because we're over the 5,000 gallon per day threshold for a change of use, and we'll be over that, switching from an office to a residential use, so
yeah,
we filed that paperwork with the wastewater department.
yeah.
Tom, I was
Okay.
looking at plan, sheet 2 of your plan. It looks like there either is or there's planned to be sidewalk along part of the driveway that goes towards Henry Clay. Yeah, it looks like it goes the whole way, out to Henry Clay. Is that already there?
Yes, I believe there's a sidewalk there along out to Henry Clay. There is no sidewalk down to Manchester Street. I spent a little time digging through aerial maps and old plans along Manchester Street. So Manchester Street in that section is a difficult road. It's a narrow road in terms of the, there's not much room outside of the roadway itself. It's all open drainage. There's steep slopes on most sides, including on our side of the street here that comes up to our site. There is no sidewalk on Manchester Street in this area, with the exception in front of, I'll call it the HECOP office building. Penachuk used to have their office here. There's kind of a sidewalk that rolls along the hills that's set back about 20, 30 feet. And my understanding is it comes up in this location here and kind of dead ends in Manchester Street, and then kind of winds its way here, if you follow my cursor, and then dead ends again into Manchester Street. So there's almost an 800-foot section. Just right here where my cursor is that intersection with Heron Cove and Bowers Landing.
Yeah.
There are sidewalks there that lead into both of those developments, but there's about an 800-foot stretch here on Manchester Street where there is no sidewalk connections that we can tie into. So I think we're happy to take a look at it. Manchester Street, I think, would be difficult to provide connectivity to,
Yeah.
just because there's not really a connection that's there now.
You may have difficulty on the other side too.
So the driveway
yeah.
that goes to Manchester Street, there's about a 40-foot drop between the front of the building and Manchester Street. How steep is that driveway? Is it exceed well, it wouldn't if it's 2000 vintage, it's new. But is it greater than 8 or 10% slope?
No, I think it's around 7.5% to 8%.
Okay.
Okay,
That's why it's so serpentine as it winds up there.
Yeah. But in 2003, it's modernish regulations, and you wouldn't have been able to build it over a certain percentage anyway. So.
yeah.
More
But that's
questions,
about
Councilman?
all I have right now, Mr. Chairman. I just,
Okay.
yeah, thank you.
Other members of the board have comments or questions? Please.
So as the only female in the room, I'm just going to give you some observations. It doesn't really matter that you have Corian or granite countertops. If when people are rounding the bend coming up Innovation Way and they see that building, all they're going to see is an office building that's stark, has no facade, has no personality. It's not inviting. So you may want to consider that, in addition to what the other comments are regarding maybe some landscaping to soften up the building. Because from my point of view, I have a vested interest in ensuring that those apartments get filled as a town councilor. We don't want a 92, apartment building lying half empty. It just doesn't work for you guys, and we don't like to have people walking around and seeing empty apartments. So I think if you can soften up the exterior a little bit, and sure, put the granite countertops in, but you got to get the people in the door. And the way it looks right now, I wouldn't live there. Is there any storage space that you're planning on anywhere? Because I see the floor plan for all of the apartments, but I don't see any storage space. And there are no balconies. So I don't know about you, but I know a lot of people that have bikes, and where are they going to put them?
Agreed. I mean, we would provide, bike bike parking outside the building. And in, in a typical apartment, there's, closets.
Maybe.
There absolutely, we will have closets in all the bedrooms. We have a closet when you walk in the door and also a closet in the kitchen.
Okay. I wouldn't want my Cadillac bike sitting outside.
There you go. That is a great segue. You mentioned that you had some photos and images of various amenities that are done on Brady Sullivan properties around. And now might be a great time to show us what some of those look like. And I know that they're just a sampling and they're not necessarily promises they're going to be in this building, but show us, give us a sense of things.
If you want to go
Yeah.
through the floor plans or just
Yeah.
go straight to the amenity.
Can I drive a little bit?
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
Thank you. So I kind of have a different perspective about the building. I mean, I think it's beautiful. I think it's compelling and stunning to have a modern piece of architecture be a residential building. I also think the landscaping that's up there now is very attractive and very well kept. So from those perspectives, I think what we're kind of leaning for is a little more of a modern feel to the property. So you'll see in our layouts here, you can see we have hardwood floors, modern colors. And these
I'm
are
gonna
just a few.
shift positions because although I can see it there, I think bigger would be better. So you keep going. I'm
Yep.
going to go stand over here while you do it.
Yeah. Thank you. So these are just some typical images of our internals of our apartments themselves. You can see a very modern kitchen feel, granite countertops or quartz countertops, hardwood floors, and white cabinets. And then typical in all of our amenities, we usually have our amenity package includes a community room. As you can see here again, very sort of modern kind of feel, which we think would lend itself very well to this particular style of architecture. We always have a library for the tenants to use. This will have books in it for them to come down and use, but also places to sit and congregate. We always include a gym, a fitness center, and a game room. So you can see here kind of some typical layouts. And that's the last slide.
Are these amenities accessible to all the tenants in the building and as part of their monthly rent, or
Yes, sir. Yep.
it's not an optional thing?
No, and they may be sectioned off at any given time for a party or something like that if somebody signs up for something specific like that, but in general, it's open to the use of the tenants.
Okay. Other comments or questions?
Is this, is the apartments, are they pet friendly?
Yes.
So they allow dogs and cats and whatnot?
Yes. Yep.
Any plan for an outdoor area for walking your dog? Or,
Yeah.
Or a spot for them to go to the bathroom, or how do you
Yeah, not a.
take care of their waste?
Yeah, it's not usually. We don't really regulate that. I mean, there's plenty of spaces around the property to do that. I mean, I think that we don't necessarily prescribe where people are, walking. So I think in this particular case, you would exit the building and either walk around the building itself or out to the area next to the parking.
Sidewalks would be a good spot to walk.
Yes.
I think that's, I like the fact that you're pet friendly. I think that's a great thing, great choice to make. And then there's some limits on the size of pets or whatever, or numbers and things. When it comes to walking them, I think that some days people will have nice long walks with their pets and they'll go across that huge parking lot to that area in the corner. But most cold days, they're gonna go 4 feet outside the door. And that's sort of why the landscape the request for there to be a little bit more green nearish the building, or less parking lot, so that it isn't, I don't know how many feet it is across there from the front door to the green space, but it's a fair ways, and on a cold day, I think a lot of people are just gonna say, I ain't going there. It's too far.
Yeah, I mean, I guess I see it a little bit differently, just in terms of there really is green space up against the building. And, you know, when you come out, I lose my, sorry. When you come out the ends where the exits are here, I mean, there's walkways that lead over to this area, very easily accessible into this space. And I'm not disagreeing with your thought about, you know, on the cold days, it's gonna be something close, but there's plenty of close space up against and around the building.
We are also gonna be likely adding that completing the pedestrian, sidewalk loop around the building, so folks would be able to exit that, either the front door or the back patio area, and,
Yeah.
migrate their way on those cold days, a couple 100 feet, and then call it duck into the building on the next door.
With, it's probably too far down into the weeds to be asking this kind of a thing, because it's, I think, deeper than a planning board ought to go, but I'm curious anyway. With pet areas and wintertime, a lot of places have to keep the ground clear where you expect the dogs to go and things. And you guys actually are going to clear or plow parts of the grass areas for the pets to use? I know that some of the buildings around here do that.
Yeah, and we do, and in some cases, I mean, it's a little more organic than, a specific location, and what we've found in some of our properties, because a lot of our properties are a little more urban, so we're not necessarily dealing with a huge woods and all that like this property has, but we'll find some space, and obviously our concern is about how the property looks and what it feels like when you approach it. So if there is a location where dogs are going regularly, we would replace some of the grass with some forever green AstroTurf kind of grass that these days looks as good or better than real grass.
In some sense, when I was thinking of or talking about sort of outdoor amenities and a little sidewalks or trails or some more green space, the things you're talking about really do touch those ideas and requirements. And maybe there's as simple as a few of those little stations that have the bags for the poop and a trash can to put it in, and encouraging people to keep the place clean and nice, or with benches and areas or things like that. Really doesn't take a ton to make it useful, and frankly, those simple things tend to get used more than the big audacious gazebo, which will be for people smoke if you build it. So sometimes those bigger ideas aren't even as productive as the smaller ones, but open space and less pavement is something that I think would be a great addition to the plan. That was really what caught my eye when I opened up the package and I looked at it. I'm like, boy, that's like a grocery store full of parking spaces. It's a lot out there to have with no particular plan to do anything with it. Anyway, I'd probably beat that horse to death.
So can I?
Yeah.
I just want to reiterate kind of what Tom had said about that. I mean, when I looked at it, I do, it is more. I mean, that's obvious. I do think that our approach really was trying to maintain the grading and drainage the way it works up there. It is complicated, and trying to get into reworking it, I think, was a little bit of a fear of ours. I guess we're not as opposed to seeing pavement as others. I mean, when I go up, I do feel like it's a gorgeous site. I mean, and I'm not looking at the pavement as much as I'm looking at the views. I mean, the views are stunning there, and so I think it's just a different sort of approach that we have to it.
I always want to leave room in my thoughts for those kinds of things, and saying that one person's view isn't necessarily the right view. At the same time, if you have 90 apartment buildings and you have 130 people parked there, as the formula suggests, and your parking lot is 2/3 empty, it's gonna look like a half-inhabited building just by virtue of having a half a parking, a very sparsely filled parking lot. It'll look like, well, this isn't really a successful development. Look at all this space. Nobody's using it. There's nobody that ever goes to this place. Whereas a smaller parking lot that feels like it's full now feels like a successful development. One of the interesting developments we have in town with Merrimack 360, they use about 80% of their parking lot almost daily, and it feels vibrant. It feels, and it never used that when it was the old Shaw's and liquor store and Blockbuster and all of that. It was 3/4 empty most of the time, and it felt like a failing development. So, little nuanced sort of way that these little hints make the project feel. With that in mind, we need to have a public hearing, open it up for the public. We also need to decide what to do with the waiver of full site plan review. And if there's no more discussion from board members, at least at the moment, let's tackle a couple of those things. Brian, you had some.
Yeah, so I just a couple kind of things, and I hope I'm not speaking out of turn here, but I think it would be fairly easy to come up with creative solutions to take up some of the parking spaces, tennis courts, basketball courts, something like that, where the drainage could continue as planned, but it wouldn't be as least to the, eye of the tenants or the lessees that are there, as just a vast open parking field. So that's kind of my thoughts on it. I'm confident you guys could come up with some creative solutions there.
Well, that's a great suggestion. Even breaking it up a little bit on the inside, but keeping most of it. And it's actually, I think there already is a basketball goal in the corner. I think I saw from the satellite picture, the paint on the ground. But yeah, if you wanted to have a basketball area or a tennis court with all this pavement that's already there, and then a couple of islands inside with some landscaping, would start to make it feel broken up.
Is there ledge? Do you know the consistency under it? Yeah, so, okay.
Yeah,
I was gonna say
the
maybe a
original
pool.
site development was a ledge project, which
Yeah.
is why you see everything dead flat and then steep slopes around it.
Got it.
Yeah. So, okay, let's tackle some of our housekeeping items. Are there any abutters or interested citizens who wish to weigh in on the proposal? I don't see any, and so we'll gavel open and gavel close the public hearing. Board members, with respect to the waiver of full site plan review, the applicant has asked for that, and we can approach that in a number of ways, and sometimes a waiver of full site plan review sweeps a great deal out of our requirements, but we control that. And so if there's a waiver of full site plan review, but we want to see a landscaping plan or something along those lines, we can tailor that to what we think the need is. I think the applicant is looking for as much relief as possible, as they always would, but that's up to us to decide. Discussion on the idea of waiving full site plan review. I certainly think that some level of waiver is absolutely warranted, of course, but your thoughts?
Yeah, who's anyone looking at me for?
I'm not, I'm just looking left, looking right.
Yeah, my concerns are the fire part, so I think some additional review needs to be done there. But that's my main,
Yeah,
concern.
I definitely have that on my mind. I have landscaping and lighting on the mind as well, to some degree.
And pedestrian walkways, I think we just kind of breezed over that, and he gave us a couple reasons why he couldn't do it there, but I didn't hear any investigation of going south with a pedestrian way that could lead to stores and everything, lead people to the stores that are in Harris Pond, for instance, because the sidewalk's all through that area, I believe. And I'm just, I'd like them to look more deeply into the pedestrian access to this site.
Okay. Other comments or questions? With that in mind, is someone prepared to tailor a motion on the request for a waiver of full site plan review to waive all but X, or whatever it is that you guys think is the appropriate thing to do?
I'll give it a go, Mr. Chairman.
Let's hear it.
Move that we not require a full site plan review, but we require them to address the issues that we've brought up here tonight in their application, especially with regard to the fire access and the approvals by those in the fire authority here in town by looking at this building and seeing if that it is fire safe. And the other thing I would say is that they review this parking area and landscaping as a combination of things that need to be addressed. I think the board is pretty unanimous in feeling that more could be done to make it attractive architecturally and so on with some landscaping. And also maybe amenities, including exterior amenities. They've got nice stuff inside the building, but from the outside doesn't show. And we do spend a little time each year here, maybe a month or two outdoors.
It's warm enough for a little bit of June.
Right, yeah. So
One afternoon in July.
I'd like them to look at that and the pedestrian access, as I've said. So it's the pedestrian, the landscaping and the parking area and the fire, not necessarily in that order, but
I was writing down, I said fire, I heard you say fire, parking area, combination of landscaping,
yeah,
amenities, and pedestrian ways.
in pedestrian ways, yeah, you can roll that into,
Okay, ought to
Yeah.
be, when you say that they ought to look into it further, do you have specifics in mind in terms of what they would provide, or just attend to them a little bit further than they have so far? Or what specifically can we
Well,
offer them?
I can't really design it from here, but I want them to
Agreed.
look at ways of making a good 5K run out of here.
My.
And we know it can be done because why does it? So, I don't know if they could get permission to go through the property to the south or not. So I can't tell you to do that. But I'd like you to look at it and see. It'd be a nice amenity to have, to be able to run to the store if you had to.
Okay, is there a second for Nelson's motion, which is to waive full site plan review, but ask the applicant to provide the results of the fire department's discussion, and address a reduced parking area with landscaping, more amenities, and more attention to pedestrian ways? Is there a second for all of that?
Lighting, I'd like to include lighting too. We
And
should look at-
lighting. I
We
mentioned
talked
that as
about
well.
lighting, exterior lighting of the building.
Okay. Is there a second for that waiver of full site plan review? I'll second it for discussion purposes, if nobody else wants to. I support the waiver of full site plan review, even though there's quite a list of things that we would want the applicant to discuss. I think, generally speaking, well, first of all, I think, Nelson, one of the things we gotta do is touch on one of the statutory criteria for a waiver, and I think it seems strict conformity would pose an unnecessary hardship to the applicant and would not be contrary to the spirit and intent of the regulations. Does that suit your motion?
Is there another one?
Yeah, specific circumstances related to the site plan or conditions of the land in such site plan indicate that the waiver will properly carry out the spirit and intent of the regulations.
Yeah, I'd go with
Those are
that
the two
one.
choices. You like the second
I
one
like
better?
the second one better, yeah.
Okay, I support either one of them, so as the seconder of the motion, I am with you. I support the motion, and that's why I seconded it. I think that asking the applicant to redo the
Boundaries.
site plan pieces like drainage, when we know that they're gonna reduce the impermeable surfaces one way or another, or at least they're not getting any larger, to show us where gas lines come in and water lines come in, which we already know because they're on the plan, to do a survey of the entire site boundary, to show topographics. All of those kinds of things don't add anything to what I'm looking at and considering. But these other pieces are things that I'm interested in, and that's why I support the waiver to the extent that it is. Any other comments or questions on the waiver? And let's vote. What's that?
Sounds like you covered it.
Okay. All in favor of granting that waiver of full site plan review, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstaining? Oh, one opposed? And and none abstaining. So 5-1-0 to waive full site plan review with the exceptions that were discussed. Now, the applicant came to us hoping for conditional final approval tonight. I think that we've discussed certain things that we need to see and want to see, and things that we want to see developed in the site plan. And so I'm thinking I want to see the board continue it to have a plan that provides us that information from the fire department and some of these other things that we've discussed. Tom?
I'm happy to do so, and understand your comments, and we'll respond accordingly. I just was looking for a little bit of clarification on a couple of items. You mentioned site lighting. Assuming we had a compliant plan in '03, are you looking for us to evaluate the use of different fixtures, or
Yep.
what would be the thought process there? I mean, they're gonna be fixtures from the early 2000s, so.
Yeah. I'm focused on the difference between a commercial use and a residential use, and that site lighting might be dimmer in certain areas, or focus on entryways and exits at nighttime, or somebody that's going out to walk their dog at 10 p.m., whereas the office building probably focused on super bright lighting until they got to their closing hours and they shut them all off. And so that's really what I want to see, but honestly, I have no idea what's out there today. So, maybe step one is show me what's already there. I mean, that's just a matter of pulling the old plan.
Oh, of course.
And then, thinking through the idea of, is this the lighting that would be appropriate for residential? You might do some more lamp post or bollard style instead of wall packs or whatever was in a more commercial development. And those are probably already on your mind anyway, but if you were going to change those things, even though you might say, well, no, we're not. If you find out 2/3 of the way in, you'd love to have a lamp post here, this is the only way to get there.
Understood.
And it may be that, you mentioned modern, and obviously an old gas lamp style lamp post isn't part of that plan, but, there's different ways to approach sort of pathway lighting, or if you're focused on making sure people can get to the area you want them to walk their dogs, or something along those lines. That's what I had in mind with lighting.
Yeah, I was just gonna ask if we did introduce some more bollard lighting or wall pack lighting in and around the building. Would you be looking for a full photometric plan with calculations meeting the full regulations, or is this more of just a report back to the board in terms of, hey, here's what's out there, these are the fixture types, and here's what we're thinking of upgrades we can make?
It is the latter, from my viewpoint,
Okay.
the latter.
I just didn't want to show up here next time without what you were looking for.
I was thinking more of a photometric plan. I don't know.
It's not up to me, it's for the whole board to decide what kind of guidance to give the applicant. My thought in saying the latter is, if you've got a compliant plan from 2001, it'll be photometrically compliant now, but that's not necessarily focused on the idea that it's a different use, and maybe you don't have to be quite as bright as before. Even within a compliant plan, there's all sorts of different intensities that you can have with the lighting, as long as you don't run off of your boundaries under the neighbors' lots and all those kinds of things. And,
Sure. Okay.
even though it's not necessarily on a plan, just some discussion of the timing of lighting. Is it 24-hour, is it all night long? Is it until certain hours? Is it a combination of those things? And all of that just relates to the usability of the parcel. If you do take our suggestion and break up some of the pavement and make a basketball or a tennis area, is that lighted? Is it lighted till 8 p.m.? Is it, whatever. That's what I was thinking, but obviously at the same time, you can't change the lighting in a way that forces you, that becomes non-compliant. And the only way to know that is with the photometric plan that Nelson's talking about. So, board members, whatever you think, tell the applicant whether you want to see the full site, the lighting plan, the photometric thing that we get, or,
I still would, yeah.
and Nelson does.
Yeah.
Other folks?
Yeah, I think it would be a good idea to have it.
We'll have the original plan from 2003, the photometric plan for the current lighting, and then we'll report back on the fixture types, the timing, what's out there now, maybe with some suggestions, as the
Yeah.
chair mentioned, about bollard lighting or some more residential-friendly lighting in and around the building, or whatever we do in the parking lot.
And you may decide that it's all fine, the way that it is, and you want us to vote on it the way that it is, and if so, I would love some photographs just to see what's out there that would help us see that. And I'm not saying that I can't be convinced that the lighting is fine, maybe it is. I have no idea what's out there at all, so can't speak to it. Does that, everybody agree that we'll do photometric lighting of the existing, and then any changes that they make, if they make changes that are adding or changing fixtures, then photometrics of those two, those new fixtures are added in?
Yeah.
Tom, is there other areas that you needed some clarification on?
Just on the fire access, certainly we can revise the plans and keep in with my conversation with Captain Manueli. We can go meet with him to have him review the plan. And I don't want to put words in his mouth, but just based on our phone conversation, I believe he's looking for this third-party consultant to be the one who's involved with the access, but more importantly, the building system. So I'm not sure that we would get a clean bill of health from him right off the bat. So we can certainly review the initial plan with him, but I think he's looking for that third-party review consultant to ultimately sign off on the access piece of it, which is why I was kind of insinuating that part of our risk, or the applicant's risk, is the assumption that they're able to provide adequate access that meets the plan that we've got before you.
Okay. I think that some of the internal building systems as to sprinklers and that sort of thing, other than the fact that they're present, and two fire accesses that are, whatever, 3-hour fire doors or whatever, all of those kinds of things are outside of planning board purview as to the internals of a building. Whatever's sort of paved as a pedestrian way that goes around the building, or however that exterior piece is satisfied with the fire department, I want to know that the fire department's happy, and I don't want to fiddle with it or change it, but I'd love to see it so that I could know how this problem was solved.
Understood. Okay.
Does that make sense?
Absolutely.
I don't know if that is something that the consultant and the fire department can kind of work out as an early part of the review, and then building systems is conditional approval, and you guys deal with that later?
I would like to think so, yeah. What I'm saying is I don't expect Captain Manueli to be issuing a letter that says we fully address that comment, because there are so many other parts to it, but certainly we can meet with him to address the access piece and update our plans to reflect that solution.
Yeah. And not that I want you to put it on a plan because it's on an old plan, but tell me what's going on with the cistern, how large it is. Is it still functional? Does it meet the modern standards? Is anything going to have to be done to it to make it for this use now that it's residential instead of commercial? Those kinds of details. But I'm sure it's on an old plan in terms of where it is. And I don't necessarily know that that matters to me as much as understanding its functionality. Other areas that you had questions about?
I think that's it. The parking, landscape, site amenities piece was well documented tonight. We'll regroup on that. And the pedestrian access connectivity, we can look on that, at that. I think that's gonna be challenging for us to find some true connectivity out there, but we'll certainly take a look. We'd love to provide access through and connect to the residential property to our south. there's probably 130 condo unit owners there that would have to sign off on any such easement. But we can certainly look at what we have and, provide a little more of a explanation of what we've got and why not we can't make it better.
Excellent, thank you for that. Let me back up to a place that I usually try to make sure I comment on earlier, and that is overall, the rehab of this building is a great idea. And I'm sorry that it's been vacant for 3 years for the applicant standpoint and he wasn't able to market it, but I think coming up with a new use for it, a new way to do it is smart, and I think it is overall a really creative way to do it, and I think it's definitely got some appeal. So I want to applaud that and offer those compliments. Also, at the same time, just to get ahead of what will inevitably be some Facebook comments about we don't need more apartments, I want to circle back on two things. You've been granted a variance from the ZBA for the use as a residential apartment, and that is not today nor at any other time a planning board decision to decide we've got enough of anything. It's the applicant's property to do what he wishes with, and he's got a variance that says he can use it for apartments. That won't stop the Facebook comments, but it is what it is. I think that there continues to be demand for the apartments that are being developed, and obviously the proof of that is that they're filling up as fast as they can get them approved. People want to be in them. When do you need to come back? What's your timing to get this stuff done?
I would think we could get a lot of this accomplished in a 2-week period.
I think that the deadline to supply materials for the next meeting kind of messes up the idea of coming back in 2 weeks.
Okay.
Robert, what do they need to know for, when do they need to get us some stuff in order to be on an agenda?
So February 15th meeting, we'd have to have materials by January 25th. So that's a week. March 1st meeting, we'd have to have it by February 8th.
What do you like better?
Yeah, we can try for,
So you want to aim for the February 15th meeting?
yes.
If you don't make it, it's just a matter of continuing it to the March 1st one or whatever. So, although by the time we get to February 15th, to continue to the March 1st, you will have had to already submit your stuff, even though it's too late for that February 15th meeting. Okay, so board members, the applicant is looking for a continuance to February 15th with no further notice to abutters.
So moved.
Second.
Motion and a second to continue to February 15th with no further notice to abutters. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstaining? 6-0-0. Thank you guys for a great presentation, and thank you for indulging all of the different requests that we have. I think it's going to be a neat little apartment building when it's done. Okay, back to the agenda. Item 5 on our agenda is the John Flatley Company as the applicant and owner. Review for acceptance and consideration of final approval for a lot line adjustment. The parcels are located at 5 Gilbert Crossing and 645 Daniel Webster Highway in the I-1 Industrial, Aquifer Conservation, and Elderly Housing Overlay Districts and Wellhead Protection Area. Tax map 6E, lot 3-1 at 645 DW Highway, and 3-7, which is 5 Gilbert Crossing. Case Planning Board 2022 number 8. And having read it into the agenda, I will hand off the gavel to our esteemed vice chair and recuse myself from consideration of this item.
Thank you very much, Chairman Best. Before we jump into this, Robert, do you have anything for us before we go to the applicant?
Just to clarify that this application, again, is only for the lot line adjustment. The site plan application piece afterwards for the actual construction of the apartment buildings is a completely separate item. So this is just for the land, the lot lines.
Thank you, Robert. Would the applicant please introduce himself and just give us a little refresher as to why you're looking for this lot line adjustment?
set for me?
All set?
Sorry.
All right, no problem. If you could please introduce yourself and just give us a little refresher as to what we're looking at.
Sure. Nathan Chamberlain with Fieldstone Land Consultants. And we're here tonight for a lot line adjustment between two parcels owned by the John Flatley Company. And this is where the Gilbert Crossing multifamily apartment complex is. And this was this is part of a conditional use permit that was granted in 2014, I believe, and amended several times. Last time, I think, was last year to allow for 2 additional apartment buildings. And that's what has facilitated this lot line adjustment. So this lot was created for the Gilbert Crossing development. When the Gilbert Crossing was approved in 2016, it was all one lot, 3-1, approximately 70-something acres. And then they came back after the site plan approval and subdivided off this lot for the Gilbert Crossing development, 3-7. Now we'd like to adjust the lot line between the 2 parcels to provide a little bit additional room for the Gilbert Crossing expansion. As stated by Robert, that site plan was submitted at the same time, but is basically, they're waiting on some things to be resolved, mainly traffic, and then the drainage design. So this is a very simple plan. We have 2 lots. We want to take a little under 2 acres from 3-7, I'm sorry, from 3-1 and add it to 3-7. It's in the industrial zone. There's no minimum lot size. There's no minimum frontage. Of course, we meet all that. We have adequate frontage, and so the 3-7 is currently around 31 acres, and we're going to make it 33. There are some wetland parts on the lot that were maintained during the apartment development, and there's another one up here by the highway adjacent to Route 3. There's a gravel road this is kind of outdated. This was part of, prior to the development of the apartments, so it pretty much ends at the lot line now and then picks up again down at the bottom. There is a sewer easement that traverses both lots that has a 20-foot easement associated with it, a sewer line that has a 20-foot easement that was all maintained during the apartments. And then in the back here along the river, there is a piece of 3-7 that's in the shoreland. There's nothing going on back there, and also an overhead easement as well. The Boston Main tracks are on the east side of the parcel. Daniel Webster, fronts on Daniel Webster Highway. There's really not a lot to talk about. This is the parcel area that we'd be coming out of 3-1 and going into 3-7, and that's pretty much it. There's, we did supply the existing conditions of the apartment complex. This is the area we're talking about right up in here. So this is the current lot line, and we'd be, pulling that down and, going into this field area. And it's really just for one apartment building, which is going to be situated in here, and it's really for an additional parking area that kind of sticks up in this direction that the lot line adjustment's for. And then the rear half of the apartments, here's that sewer easement that traverses through the property. And this is where the other building's going to go, down here off the end. So it really has nothing to do with lot line adjustment. So it's really just the front portion to accommodate the first building, which we're calling Building 6. And that's it. So fairly straightforward. If you have any questions about it, I can certainly answer them.
Thank you, Mr. Chamberlain. Board members, before we jump into asking questions, it seems that we have yet to vote this application as complete. Is that right, Robert?
Correct.
We've seen it like 3 times. Board members,
They all
do I
look the
hear a
same
motion
after a
as
while.
So moved.
Second.
I have a motion made by Mr. Dano and seconded by Mr. Disco as to the completion of this. All members in favor of the motion, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. All opposed? All abstaining? That is 5-0-0. Now, I haven't lost this. Do we have any other questions regarding this relatively straightforward lot line adjustment?
Seems straightforward, yeah.
What happens if we say no? Robert?
Yeah.
If the lot line adjustment's denied, then the site plan's not gonna be going very far.
That's correct, which is the next agenda
Yeah.
item. Do I hear a motion as
You
to?
should
You
have
have to
a
open for
good
public
reason.
comment first.
Oh,
please.
that's right, yes. Sorry, I always skip over
You
that.
kinda need a reason to say no, but.
That being, that being said, I'm now gonna open up the public hearing. Any members of the public that wish to step forward and say something on this item, please do so. Seeing nobody else in the room but us, I'm going to now close the public hearing. Board members, questions, motions, thoughts, feelings? Nobody? Mr.
I will
Disco?
make a motion to approve the site plan as submitted.
The lot line
The
adjustment.
lot line adjustment, yeah.
Correct. Do I hear a second to Mr. Disco's motion?
Second.
Seconded by Mr. Dano. Do I have any further discussion regarding this item? Seeing none, all in favor of approving the motion, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. All opposed?
Aye.
All abstaining. That's 4-1-0, with Mr. Anketel voting in the negative.
All right.
You have your lot line adjustment. That being completed, the next item on our agenda is number 6, with John Flatley Company. This is a review for acceptance and consideration of a final approval for a site plan to construct 2 48-unit apartment buildings in addition to the existing 240 units, in accordance with the most recently amended Flatley mixed-use conditional use permit. The parcel is located at 5 Gilbert Crossing in the I-1 Industrial Aquifer Conservation and Elderly Housing Overlay District and Wellhead Protection Area. That's tax map 6E, lot 003-07. This is case number planning board 2022-07. Mr. Chamberlain, as I see that you are still the applicant,
Yes.
give us a rundown of what you have. Actually, I apologize. Robert, do you have any input on this before we go to the applicant?
No, I think we've already covered it, so.
That's what I thought. Mr. Chamberlain, if you please.
I thought that this was gonna get continued, so I didn't bring anything to present on this.
I mean, we were most likely gonna continue it. I was under that assumption, but if we have any other questions.
I thought it was
All
gonna be
right, so-
continued.
Okay.
I guess since, so I guess in summary, if you're not as familiar with it, staff has some outstanding concerns with this site plan. One being, and the biggest, as far as we're concerned, being the question of whether or not infiltration is allowed for the drainage design on this site. When the apartments were initially constructed, that was not a question. Since that time, that became a question as the state imposed stronger restrictions in the areas around Saint-Cobain. So the applicant has been directed to get a direct answer from the state on whether the stormwater infiltration design is acceptable on this property. Some other questions are involving the traffic study that was provided, as peer review has requested some additional information, which the answers to those questions will necessitate a full traffic study, which I do believe the board is looking for anyway. So the items still need to be provided to us. So outside of a very general overview presentation from the applicant, there's really not much more action that can be taken on the site plan at this time.
Okay, thank you, Robert. Mr. Chamberlain, you understood all? of
Yeah,
what
I can
staff's
speak to
looking
that a little bit. So, we've known about this since this was submitted back in, I think, November. And we have been working to get something out of DES, and, no one wants to put pen to paper. So where we've been directed to do, so they do have a process for allowing infiltration on these type of sites. And there's 4 steps, and basically step 4 is being worked on by GZA. They have done a lot of the environmental work on the property. They developed a soil management plan for when the apartments were built, and they developed a soil management plan for the flex buildings. So they are working on that memo to address those concerns, and that has been submitted to the state. And once that memo is done, we'll hopefully get a letter out of the Haz Waste Bureau. So that is moving forward, and hopefully it's going to get done. The AOT permit has been submitted,
Okay.
and just to get that process moving. So we should have an answer to that. As far as the traffic, I believe that the traffic study is being worked on as well.
Okay.
All right.
Board members, any questions regarding that limited information presented by staff? No, I didn't think so. Mr. Chamberlain, do you have a date that you would feel comfortable pushing this to?
I would shoot for the 15th.
The 15th.
Yeah.
Robert, do you think that's doable?
I guess I can't speak to that. It'd be what the applicant would say. So if they feel like they can get us stuff by next week, then
Because I do
then
know
that's
DES is, I mean,
realistically.
the state is moving relatively slow, so I don't want to put you guys up against coming here just to ask for another
Just-
continuance.
Yeah. And we do have to get our peer review on the,
That's correct,
the
yeah.
traffic study as
So we
well.
not only need your information from the state that's moving slowly, but our peer review.
Yeah, we
needs
can
to be
do,
done as
what's the
well.
next one, the first?
Yeah, March 1st with the deadline of February 8th. And just for the board's information, peer review has at least started on this, but they did
Mhm.
not review the drainage portion because of that outstanding question. So it wouldn't be the full length of time for the peer review, but the revision to the traffic when that gets submitted, as well as the drainage design when we get an answer on that question.
Thank you, Robert. So, Mr. Chamberlain, March 1st is more comfortable for you?
Yeah, I mean, I think the drainage is gonna be answered within the week, but just to be safe.
Okay. Ms. Healy, you have a question?
Yes, can I just ask a clarifying question?
Please.
On the traffic study, that is to include all of the existing residential buildings, plus the impact of the additional two, plus all of the warehouses with all of the bays for the tractor trailers, correct?
That would have to be answered by either Robert or the applicant. Robert, do you have an answer for that?
I do not have the full answer to that, but I don't believe this traffic study would consider anything more than the apartment site itself.
Oh. I was expecting more, yeah.
Well, it's, the driveway is for the apartments, it doesn't have anything to do with the other uses. I mean, the traffic is gonna take consideration of what's out on, Daniel Webster Highway. He has been piggybacking all his studies onto each other, so, but this should only deal with that one driveway.
Now, Robert, I apologize. Mr. Chamberlain, are they redoing a full traffic study, or are they just rehashing the numbers out?
They're gonna take and add the two apartment buildings to determine the increase in what the capacity is in the street.
Okay.
Well,
That's gonna be the full study rather than the mini version.
Correct, yeah. For some of the information they wanted in part of traffic review necessitates a full study for the apartment complex lot itself. The things that they're asking for are existing traffic volume at the driveway, current capacity level, existing traffic turning movements at the driveway to determine actual distribution pattern, current stop control delay for the driveway at AM and PM peak hours, crash data at Gilbert Drive and Daniel Webster Highway, 2019 ATR data for DW Highway. And because they want to make sure the counts weren't artificially lower due to the COVID limiting travel at that time period. So basically, that information would kick it up to a full study, just again for the apartment complex itself.
Right, so they have to go out and take turning movements of the driveway and add in the increase from the two apartment buildings, so on and so
Yeah.
forth. We're gonna have to this has to get submitted to DOT too to amend the driveway permit.
Yeah. Board members?
well, I think we need more than that, because I'm unhappy with the original traffic study that was done and applying it today, because it made some assumptions about uses that I never really agreed with. And I think I thought we were going to get a full, fresh look at this whole thing. I'm not convinced that original study was as thorough as it ought to have been.
You mean the original study from, what was it, 2014?
Yeah, the one from.
So that's
what,
for the conditional use permit, this is for the apartments. So the conditional use permits studied the whole, everything was included in the conditional use permit, so that's all.
Yeah,
There was multiple driveways, and it had a lot of different buildings. So this is just one driveway with apartments on it.
yeah. Well,
The rest of the conditional use uses have nothing to do with this.
no, but they affect this.
They affect DW Highway, but they all stand on their own. They all, he's been submitting traffic studies for each one of those uses as they go get site plan approval.
Well, I wanted to see a study that included the whole site. That's what I was looking for when I asked for the redo of the study.
From my,
because
sorry, Nelson. go
it's
ahead.
been so long.
Yeah,
Yeah.
from my understanding, what the applicant is saying, which I do remember that the full study was done in 2014 when it was still considered, I believe it was a big box commercial building,
Yeah.
5 apartments or 4 apartment buildings.
Cool.
I think it was always 5.
5.
Yeah.
It was somewhere around there, and I believe the industrial flex was included in that as well.
Yes. Some version of it. But
Yeah. I mean, given that we've lost a big box store now, there's not much retail going in on that site. I completely understand what you're saying, and I mean, I hear you. But I can't see those numbers increasing anymore from, I mean, losing a giant big box store like that and going to just simple flex industrial. I mean, Robert, do we even have the authority to?
Yeah,
Well,
really,
yeah.
no. I asked him this question, and he's saying absolutely not. The apartments is what's being considered, so the study is limited to the apartment
Yeah.
area. The board does not have the jurisdiction to require it for areas of the site that are not currently under consideration before them. And as Mr. Chamberlain said, individual studies can be generated for those individual pieces as they come forward. But right now, the study needs to be limited to the apartment area.
Which is before us, okay.
Yep.
Ms. Healy, you have a question?
Yeah, I just think the concern is that we've got ultimately 7 apartment buildings plus 3, maybe 4 warehouses, or whatever you want to call them, with all of the 16 or 20 bays for tractor trailers within a small half-mile, length of space. And effectively now, it ties up DW Highway. So hopefully, DOT will get off, and actually look at the plans and see what is really going on down here, because it's already a mess. So I think that's the concern that we all have, is that we're adding to that overall picture of traffic. I don't even have a right word for it.
It's my understanding, Robert, that the lights, well, I know the ones north of there are controlled by DOT, but the lights that exit right in front of the old 7-Eleven are controlled by DOT, correct?
I believe that's where it
So
stops,
that whole
yes.
corridor, starting at the old 7-Eleven north, is DOT
Yes.
jurisdiction?
Yeah,
Correct.
The urban compact for DOT starts at essentially Walgreens at the Reeds Ferry graveyard.
Can the applicant clarify, you said that the traffic studies piggyback off each other, and what you mean by that? So there was the original study?
So, yeah, he took the original, it's my understanding, he took the original study done in 14, and he's just, as the uses change, as buildings change, how many, the size of the building, 'cause it's, it's changed quite a bit since the original approval. And, of course, the background traffic increases too. So he updates the background traffic, he updates what's being proposed, and, redoes the study. So right now, it's the one for the flex building is in front of DOT.
Understood.
And that's, so there's, that affects both the St. Cobain signalized driveway and the new driveway that's associated with the flex buildings. And the same thing for, the high bay. He's gonna have to do something for the St. Cobain driveway.
Got it.
But those are gonna be factored in now in this new study.
No, we're only looking at the apartments. That's the only driveway we're working with. If they were connected, then that would be a different story, but they're not connected.
Well, how do you get the background? You've gotta have background in there. This thing doesn't exist by itself.
Sure, he's gonna do traffic counts and get the existing traffic out on Daniel Webster Highway.
Okay.
So you want him to add in the trips from the flex buildings?
Yes,
It'd be nice to know.
and other buildings that are under construction right now that may not have been included in the original review.
Hmm.
If you look at the Edgewood, whatever it is at this end, the new housing that was built at exit 11, those are adding to the background noise here, to the
Mhm.
background traffic. And that's gotta be taken into consideration.
A lot of time they'll look at plans that are being, under construction or whatnot and add those in, so. I mean, either way, it's not gonna, it's gonna pale compared to what the existing traffic is on Daniel Webster Highway. And the backups that are occurring now are from existing traffic.
Well, I didn't get what pales. I didn't understand.
So the two buildings we're talking about and the buildings
Yeah.
at exit 19, exit 11 that you just mentioned,
Yeah,
that traffic is pretty much insignificant over what's already on the road. So I can certainly talk to them about having to add those trips in and see, what the impacts are.
well, I do want them to do
But
that.
typically what a traffic study is done is you take your site driveway and the impacts that site driveway and that use are gonna have on the road. And to make sure there's no safety concerns. And really, what he's really gonna be looking at is level of service. So this is not a signalized intersection, Gilbert Drive is not signalized. It's a stop control. So the level of service is gonna be absorbed. The level of service is not gonna, he doesn't check the level of service on Daniel Webster Highway. He's checking the level of service at that stop condition. So the added trips are only gonna increase, or I should say decrease the level of service at the site drive. Follow what I'm saying?
Well, I do know what you're saying, but
And then,
It's not
maybe
very
further
quick.
downstream, probably most of the trips are gonna head north to get on a highway.
maybe. Yeah,
Maybe.
But he'll find
Unless
it out.
unless they're going south, then they're gonna go down to the southerly exit. So,
And jam up that intersection, right? I think we
It's-
gotta look at what the impact of this is on the system.
sure. He's gonna, he's gonna take whatever was done for the original approval and update it. I'm not sure how you could ask him to do more than that.
Well, because you know more now than what you knew when you did the original system.
Okay.
Also, Nelson, if I remember correctly, one of your concerns in the past were that the analysis that was done for that original approval, the things that were taken into consideration weren't even from Merrimack. They're just like buildings from other
Well,
areas.
Yes, that's true. That
So,
was
so to have the analysis done in this area, I think would be more prudent than an analysis that was taken from other areas. I think is
I'm
what.
not sure what you mean by
As-
taken from other areas.
So they used other buildings or like buildings from other locations, the traffic analysis from those other locations, not in Merrimack. They didn't take the whole DW
Okay.
highway and see what the actual usage was here to come up with that traffic report.
Yeah,
You know what I'm saying?
yes, I
Yeah.
know what you're saying.
Robert, you
yeah.
have input on that?
Yeah, that actually, I believe, related to the fiscal analysis, not the traffic study. But I guess my concern with this discussion continuing on is they have marching orders on amending the study. They are working on doing that. We haven't accepted the plan as complete. I think we should probably move, so the board acknowledges and the applicants requested to continue. We started going that way. We should probably move a question on that and let the discussion go next time when we have more information.
I agree, Robert.
Sounds good.
I'm okay with that.
And Mr. Chamberlain, you're still all set with March 1st, correct?
Yes.
Do I hear a motion to that?
I make a motion that we continue to the March 1st meeting.
Do I hear a second for that motion? Seconded by Ms. Healy. Any discussion? No? All in favor of moving this to March 1st, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. All opposed? All abstaining? That is 5-0-0. Mr. Chamberlain, thank you for the discussion. With that agenda item being done, I'd like to invite our actual chairman, Mr. Best, to rejoin us.
I'll be right there since I give us a little light.
Thank you.
Thank you.
What? Yeah.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Vice Chair. A nice job with those agenda items. We are up to item 7 on our agenda, which is a discussion and possible action regarding other items of concern. Does Does anyone have any discussion items or items of concern?
No.
Hearing none. Okay, that's an easy one. Check. Approval of the minutes of January 4th, 2022. What say you? Motion to approve the minutes of January 4th, 2022. Is there a second?
Second.
Motion and a second. Further discussion?
Discussion, please.
You got
Yeah.
it. What's up?
Okay, page 2, item number 4, Chris Ross applicant, and the 702 Daniel Webster Highway. Continued review for acceptance and consideration of final approval for a site plan to construct 42 suite extended stay hotel and associated improvements. This parcel is located in the C2 General Commercial District, tax map EBB. This item is continued, and then it says, from the December 7th Planning Board meeting. At the applicant's request, the board voted 5-0-0 to continue the application's acceptance and public hearing to February 1st at 7 PM on a motion by, I thought we decided to can that, and we,
No,
So-
it's not our choice to can it or not. The applicant's deciding whether he's going to withdraw it or not,
I can,
based on the next agenda item.
yeah, I'll clarify. So he was ready to withdraw. Mr. Best, you had asked him to kind of wait on that to make sure that the storage facility was the way he wanted to go, so he accepted that choice. And then a few days later, he did email in and withdraw the application, so it will not be coming back before you.
okay, it looks like it was gonna be coming back, and I thought it was gone,
Yeah.
so.
At that particular moment in time, yes, but no.
Yes, but no, okay. And, let me see, I thought there was one other place, 2 and 3. Well, no, I guess that was my only thing. If it didn't,
Okay, if there's no further discussion or comments on the minutes, you okay, Nelson? You need a second?
well, I can't understand my own notes now, so go ahead with it.
Happens to me all the time. All in favor, say aye.
All right.
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstaining? So the minutes are approved with a vote of 5-0-1 with Paul abstaining. That is the last agenda item we have. Is there a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Is there a second? Motion and a second to
Boy,
adjourn.
she's quick.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstaining? 6-0-0 to adjourn. Thank you very much for all the hard work tonight, everybody, and don't forget to turn your microphones off.